making more progress now, yes. Dear, we're making more progress now, yes. Dear, we're making more progress now. Still have a long way to go. They promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Promised to bring us more revenue and quality. Instead is now on its way. Yes, dear, we're making more progress now. Yes, dear, we're making
Hello, this is Brian O'Haron, February 8th, another version of our show, Planning for Success. First thing I want to point out tonight is you're going to see a picture in back of me, two pictures tonight. The first picture is a picture of the Northwestern Community College Library right down here in Winsted. It's a great place. I go there quite a bit, do a lot of work. A lot of nice people down there to help and knowledgeable, and it's quite a pleasant environment. The whole environment down there is very nice, and they just now have a new science building too down there that's been recently put up in the last few years. A great place. This is my card. Get it down there. Anybody in the state of Connecticut can get a card and use this library. Just for, you go down there, show them your driver's license or some other form of identification, and you'll get a card. And there's plenty of things to do down there, plenty of good information, a lot of good videos, a lot of good music, a lot of good books. The computers are there. You can use those, providing the students aren't in need of them, and it's really good. Now, I did get reprimanded by Tony Canavo, my friend, because I said university on this show once. I often talk about the college, but it is a college, not a university, but to me it's a university because it's got a lot of good stuff there. And then afterwards, you're going to see Bruce Grezik on the back of me, because we're going to be talking a lot about the selectmen meeting that was held the other night on the 4th, and Bruce was the star of that show. So he's really coming into his own prominence, and we'll be talking a bit about that tonight. Now, there was some information in the newspaper this morning about the school budget, that they reported on a school budget. So I'm going to be going now through quickly the upwards pressure on the next budget, just to show you how I brought it up to date from the information this morning. Now, the first thing I always say on these things is that it's very, very initial information. The superintendent of schools has not even presented it to the Board of Education yet. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know really whether in the figures, because I don't have a copy of the budget. I was promised I would get one, so I will get one sooner, and in a few days, and then I'll look at it closer and try to understand it better. But basically, our debt has stayed the same. That's debt carryover from having the roads and all those things done in the budget. in the last bond issue. Now we're going to have to pay the fiddler for that. So the work's all done almost. I'm not sure all of it's done, but most of it is. But so we still now for 20 years have to pay for the cost of that plus interest. So that's going to be $428,675. I did last time I split the town out because the mayor has asked for both the town and the schools to come in at 3% this year. Now, on this 3%, I didn't include the 428,765, so you know it won't be probably a pure 3%. That's why I'm going through this. But as far as the rest of the budget is concerned, they're in addition to this debt money, they're trying to go for 3%. And if they can include the debt money in that too, that'd be wonderful. But I wouldn't really expect that. The next is the school expense. Was in the newspaper today, and I don't quite know all the circumstances here, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt this week. Next week I'll update it. It's $866,090 is what they're asking for now. I don't know whether that includes or doesn't include the ECS money. The ECS money, according to the governor's recent request for her budget, just a request, it's still at the initial stages, is for us is about $400,000, a little less than $400,000. So for this particular time, it looks like about 4.4% for the schools. Whether that includes the $400,000 or not, I don't know. Whether that includes Pearson or not, I don't know. I don't know. The last numbers the school presented did include Pearson. I'm not sure about these. So I'll look at that as soon as, hopefully by next week, because the budget will be presented to the Board of Education next week, and it'll be public information. So we'll have that, and I'll let you know in next week's program. This is budget season coming up, so we're going to have this every week as far as we can. Now, so that means that's about dropped down from last week's numbers. We had higher numbers to 2.71 mils upward pressure there, or 7.92% for that. And don't forget, again, about the reval effect for those people that are going to get a big increase because of reval, and there are plenty of people going to get a big increase because of reval. And what I did here is I took the 866,090, and I'm not quite sure about this, but I subtracted the 400,000 that Governor Rell says we may get here, and we may be more than that. It may be less than that by the time everybody down in Hartford gets through examining it and changing it. But right now, that's what she proposed, roughly that number. That would be 466,090, and I'm not exactly sure there, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt this week. So that would be 0.79 mils for the school, or 2.31%. Of an increase. And all these numbers are unofficial and approximate. The capital, I've corrected that, updated that as well. It's pretty much the same as last week, so I'm not going to go through all the detail there. You can see for yourself, it's the grants from this year will be carried over to next year because we haven't really done much with those. And then for next year additional, we still got the Pearson School. And as we'll say, that's about $900,000. State pays $612 or so of that. We pay about $288. Should we do it next year? And I'm pretty sure we will be doing at least some of it next year. I don't know exactly how much. We won't know until those plans are finalized. They're out to bid now, and we should be getting information sooner or later. So that's a total of $250,000 on the capital side. And then for Newfield Road, I'm sorry, it isn't a total. It's Newfield Road is $250,000. That breaks down to $129,600, and then $57,400 for the town. So that means between the two, the town will have $345,400, or another 0.59 mils for 1.71. If you take that 1.71 and add it to 7.92 that I had up for the town and the schools, you equals 9.63%. Upward pressure as of now. And again, very initial stuff. And then last time I told you that we had received last year $600,000 for our ECS grant, and we were expecting a lower number this year, more like 326 or something like that. Turns out now that Rell is trying to get us $400,000, the governor. So if that happens, she submitted that in her budget, and if that gets approved, it'll be $400,000. So that's what the other considerations are there. This is a very flexible number. We won't know this until after the state's budgets are approved and everybody has all the information. Next, I'm going to go through the notices. Trying to experiment this week, trying to put everything in a higher font, bigger font, so you can read it better. I did notice that this font I used on some of my slides last week was much easier to read. So we got more slides, but they're bigger print, and you'll be able to read them a little better, I hope. Some of these tend to curl on me, especially on a rainy day like today and dampness. But so there's still time to appeal by March 15th, March 15, 2008, to the Town of Winchester Board of Appeals if you desire. Somewhere in the neck of the woods. I don't think a few days here or there will kill you if you're a little late. But try to be early if you want to appeal any of your assessments. The Highland Lake sewer hookups, as I told you, there are about 15 that aren't complete yet, and people will be getting notices about those. I think this is the last week I'm going to talk about Highland Lake sewers. There's only 15 people that are in violation, and they might not even be in violation, but that have to be looked at. So I'll let that go, and everybody should know by now that there is that. That'll be coming out, and those letters will be coming out. And then the applications for the elderly tax, I think I had a mistake on there last week. I was listening to the selectmen meeting, and they put up a different date, and I checked it out. And what's going to happen there is you got between February 1 and May 15th, applications are available from the assessor's office, and you try to go down there and get them, and preferably after February 1st, because they're still doing a lot of work on this tax stuff right now. Now, the next thing I want to go over is the major status. Somehow, once again, I goofed up my papers a little here, but I'll work my way around it. We're going to talk about now the selectmen meeting, the Board of Selectmen meeting on February 4, 2008. And I'm going to slow down a little here so that I can do justice to this. Last week I rushed a little to get through that charter stuff, and people did give me feedback. They thought I went a little too quickly. So I'm going to slow down, although I am a AAA guy, you know, AAA, maybe quadruple A, you know. So I like to move fast. But anyway, these are the Board of Selectmen meeting of February 4th, 2008. If you saw it or caught it again on the rerun last night, or will catch it on the rerun on Saturday morning, you'll see that they had a 2-hour meeting. And the first thing was the approval of the minutes, and that was, again, that was policy, so it's red. They talked about Lambert K, and I've got although Lambert K itself is a policy issue, I didn't think the discussion of it that was there for 20 minutes at the meeting was necessary, and I think that was just my own personal opinion. Other people that had it there might thought it was necessary, but I thought that was more of an informational thing. So that's the wrong color there, and I apologize for that. But I left it in red because further down on here you're going to see in the agenda they did talk about Lambert K, and it was a policy issue at that time. So I think Lambert K should be left to the town manager. He can work it out with them. There's a lot of stuff to work out with the Lambert K. That's the people who want to buy Lambert K for $50,000 from the town, who paid $1 for it. And there's a lot of conditions involved with the sale of the property, and they all have to be looked at, and they're changing on the fly. So that's important for the town manager to get his hands around that, get a plan, get it all agreed, and then bring it to the selectmen for approval and consideration. There was public comment. That went on forever. The public comment, that was at least, I don't know, it was 20 minutes or so. I thought it was too much myself. I do think they should put some controls on that public comment. They need it. It's in the charter. It's good. We wanted to have the public comment. But I suggested in my paper on how to run an efficient meeting is that people should write down these long things on a piece of paper and then just introduce them during the public comment. Maybe give some highlights for 3 minutes or so, and then pass the paper into the selectmen. They don't have to stand there and talk for 15 minutes. I mean, that's a bit much, I think. So it was good stuff, good people with good comments, but just went on way too long. Next was the board, but I put it up here, public comment, as policy, because it is in the charter, and we do have to do it, and it is good for the town. So I'm leaving it at that. Boards and commissions, that was done. There were some appointments made, and there were some commissions canceled. We'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the comment section. That's important to do, and that's something the Board of Selectmen must do. So that was done. I gave that a red. The town manager's report, as I said last week, is always going to be green because it's not a policy. Most of it is running the town. It's the CEO work, running the town, so I gave that a green. The next is the Lambert K issue that was on the agenda, as opposed to the Lambert K presentation that was at the beginning of the meeting. That was tabled, the Lambert K, because the town manager needs to do a lot more work with the people, and even perhaps in executive session, as they said at the meeting, with the selectmen present. That's their decision if they want to do that. But that'll happen probably in a couple weeks. So the T means tabled. The Pearson tank issue came up. I'll talk more about that later. That's more, put green on that because that's more of an implementation thing, not a policy thing. The steep grant came up. That was more of an implementation thing. That's rather than a policy thing at this particular stage. We're just trying to put a plan together, and the town manager can do that for going after the steep grant. And then the next was executive session, which is definitely policy. They talked about a few things in the executive session that are definitely policy and very important. So they went off for 20 minutes into executive session, and there was a nice break for everybody. That was halfway through the meeting or so, maybe a little past that even. Then there was, in the executive session, they talked about extending the public works contract, and they came out of the executive session, and a motion came up to accept the new public works contract that is 8 months late in getting accepted. I'm told by people that the one before it took a year and a half, was a year and a half late getting accepted. So we're improving. Went from a year and a half to 8 months late. Now we are going to start in a few months, according to the meeting, we're going to start working on the next public works contract, which will be due before next fiscal year begins. And let's hope we can get that one done on time. And I think if we keep moving the way we're going here, with the town manager getting more and more responsibility, and that's why I'm putting his picture up on the back here for the rest of the program, because I want to make sure he's recognized as having come a long way in a few months and done a lot for the town. And it just goes to show you how important it is to have a good, strong town manager that is in control and on top of the issues and down into the detail and coming to the selectmen just to report progress and to ask for policy decisions when necessary. So that was a very good example of that, and I'm sure you're going to be happy with the as this thing progresses in the future. And I'm kind of sad to see that Bruce will be leaving the end of March. He's going to stick around till the end of March and help us out, and I'm sure he'll be on the phone afterwards helping the new town manager once that happens. But things are really picking up speed here. A lot of decisions are getting made that have been around for a long time. So good for you. Thanks for doing that. And it was a good outcome for everybody. Everybody won on this, and we're happy to hear it. The next thing was a tax deferral for the elderly. That was unanimous, by the way, the Public Works contract, once they came out of executive session. Then they talked about a couple other things in executive session, which we'll go over later, and but they weren't brought up. They were just informational things and progress things. They weren't brought up for any motion at the meeting when they came out of executive session. And then they talked about the tax deferral for the elderly, which was also unanimously approved. What they're going to do there is they're going to put in a better deal for the elderly. But I want to tell you that this elderly tax deferral thing, although it's good for people, only 7 people ever applied for it before. And there's a reason for that. And my own view, having looked into it down at the assessor's office, read the papers, and talked to a lot of the senior citizens in town, is that the real problem with that, and the reason people aren't using it, is because the criteria is too low for being accepted to be qualified for this program. So what they're going to do now is they're going to take a look. They're going to try to get this piece put in right now, which is raising the limit from 25% to 75% or so, and as opposed to the 50% that was proposed by the last administration. So they've made it even better than it was before. They finally got it approved, which took a long, long time. It's very difficult for the finance director to predict how many people are going to be applying for these. There's too many conditions, there's too much information, and it would take a real survey of the town to find that out. So We don't know that. The decision was made without the information, which is all right. It's not going to be a backbreaker for the town. And but the real problem has to be addressed next year, which is what can we do to really make it a good for the elderly, so we get more than 7 or 14 or whatever people sign up for this program. It's no good to have a program. I think, to be honest with you, it's been a little bit of a political football in the past for election reasons and things, but now that's all past us. So as soon as this one, they're going to work on getting this into the ordinance. That'll take a few months, and hopefully we can do it by the beginning of next year, fiscal year. If not, it'll go into next fiscal year, and then we'll at least have it behind us. And then they're going to work on taking a further look at this to see how they can make it more beneficial for the elderly people in town, so more people qualify for it, and of course we have to be able to afford whatever it is too. So we don't, everybody in town can't qualify for it, but and there are some people that will. But if you are a senior citizen, I would advise you to get down to the, one way or another, by phone or in person, to the assessor's office, find out, get an application, find out what this is all about, find out whether it applies to you or not. And if it doesn't apply to you, let your selectman know exactly why it doesn't apply to you. Write a letter, send an email, call them on the phone, go knock on their door, do whatever you can to make sure they get the right input, because that's what they need to be able to make responsible decisions. They need your input. The next is the colors again. Red is policy, non-policy, and then I put purple in for information or public relations. And I think some of those probably should have been purple that came out red in the earlier part of that selectmen meeting. Now, purple, when you use the computer and you send this down to be printed out, sometimes purple comes out as red because there's a mixture there, as you know, to get purple. So maybe I better pick a different color for that in the future, and then I won't have any problem with it. So now I'm going to talk about the major status. The major status hasn't changed too much again this week because they are working on a lot of things, and they're working somewhat on the major status stuff. But the problem here is that these things take a long time, and they're not exactly first priority right now because they got so many fires to put out and things to get done, and they're slowly getting that behind them. But you'll see the first one is still elect businessmen as a majority of the selectmen. That's done. That's why it's red. Establish and publish high-level business priorities. Now, they haven't really done that as well as I'd like to see them do it. In the pre-election, they said they were going to have 5. One was revenue, one was budget, one was changing the charter, one was, I don't even remember all 5 of them right at this minute, but there were 5 of them, and they were going to have they were going to take over the maintenance of the schools. The town was going to try to take over maintenance of the schools, and that's one of some changes have been recommended to the Charter Revision Committee to allow that to happen. Doesn't mean they'll be approved, doesn't mean it'll ever happen, doesn't mean the statutes will let it happen, but it is something that's going to be investigated. So, but I'd like to see them publish those 5 and hang them up on all the walls around the town hall and let everybody know, and I'll put them out on this program and make it very clear to people what the high-level business priorities are for the town. The next is to delegate authority for line management and to make plan and decisions 95% of the time. So that's happening. That's why it's in blue. These blue ones are happening. The town manager is getting more and more muscle every meeting, and you're going to keep seeing that strengthen. A good part of this meeting was the town manager reporting progress on things that he's personally managing with his people and dealing with. They haven't all been completed yet, but there's a lot of progress going on. Things have been stuck in the mud here for quite a few months, some of them for a year or so. So we're still going to keep pushing, and I'm going to push hard on this program because that is the key to success, the delegation and authority. And one of these future programs, I'm going to be talking about how things are done down in Torrington, because I'm looking into that for as a member of the Charter Revision Commission, not for them, but just as a member of them and as a citizen. I'm down there trying to understand how that mayoral form works, and what I can tell you is they do a lot of delegating down there, and their meetings run much more efficiently, at least the ones I've been in and seen. So we got to keep working on that, and that's something that you almost never achieve. You just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and trying to bring to everybody's attention, which I'm going to do a bit of today again in my comment section, where we're not doing enough delegating and where we're not pushing things down because when we push them down to the town manager, then the town manager pushes them down to his managers, and they push them down to their managers, and out to subcontractors and everything, and that's how things move much quicker, much more responsibly, and we get things done more efficiently and much more businesslike. We must do that. Now, the next is change the charter where necessary to run as a business. That, as you know, they have established a charter revision committee. We are going to look at that as a commission, and one of the things they wanted to do, of course, was change it to a mayoral form of government, and they wanted the commission to examine that and at least consider it. So the commission is starting, it's working on that. There'll be another meeting next week. I have told you on previous programs what the meeting schedule is: 2 meetings in February, 2 meetings in March. First 15 minutes is open to public comment. The public is invited. So that's that. The next one, 3 are in yellow. Yellow means not started yet, but they're all budgetary issues. Well, the first one is produce a 5-year financial objectives. They do have, by state statute, they have to produce a 5-year plan for capital spending. There is one. It's not pleasant to look at. It's not something I would be proud of. I don't think these people will be proud of it either when they get time to pay attention to it. But that will come up through the normal budgeting process, which is going to happen over the next 2 or 3 months. One of the requirements of the finance director and the town manager is to present this 5-year plan. It's a state statute. They must do it, of capital spending. Now, in the past, we haven't done too good at that, because one of the things, if you're going to present a plan for capital spending, you better also know where the revenue is going to come from that you're going to spend. So you have to have a plan for revenue, and I've mentioned that many times on this program, and I've asked the Charter Revision Commission to consider that. The other thing you need is, how much are you going to spend in the next 5 years on this capital stuff? And where are you going to have the money to spend? Where's that going to come from? So you need an expense plan as well. And together, the 3 things together, that's called a business plan, right? So I've asked and been preaching on this program that we need a business plan for the next 5 years. And their objectives more than a plan, because in 5 years it's hard to tell where your revenue is going to come from. But as you know from this show, it's easy to see where expenses can go. As you know, we saw that in the bond issue. But expenses, they're easy to predict. You can predict that pretty easy. So much a percent a year for raises, so much percent a year for capital spending, so much percent a year for other expense budget items. That's easy to project. What's hard to project is, where are you going to get the money from? Where is it going to come from? And on one of these programs, I do want to talk about that, because the educators always tell me that they can't get involved in politics. They can't get involved in trying to help raise money. Well, I don't agree with that. I'm going to give you some experiences from my own life where I have been involved with educational and state educational type, not private, but state, public universities that do go out and try to raise money, and they do it all the time. They're always, some of these chancellors of universities, that's their major job, is to raise money for new buildings and for the school and for all their needs. So I have a little disagreement here with that, and on one program I want to spend quite a bit of time on it. But everybody needs to be concerned about this 5-year plan and where the money is going to come from. How are we going to get the money? Where are we going to get all this money to be able to do all the things we want to do? The easiest way, by the way, is to say, well, let's raise a bond issue for $57 million commitment and get it from the taxpayers. That's the easy way. But you got to remember that when you do that, there's going to be other needs over the next 20 years, too, that are going to need capital needs, and we're going to need expense needs. And when you do the big bond issue, then you don't have that. It's not so easy to get the money. I think there's one town in the state that had a big, it's a city actually, I think, that had a big increase in its revaluation, like a 65% average, and they had a tough time. Matter of fact, they didn't get their budget approved the next year for any increase. They probably won't for a few years, because that's a big whack for people to swallow. So now remember, not everybody gets that increase. It's only the people that are higher than the average that get the increase. But there are a lot of people that were higher than the average, and if they come out to vote, they're a pretty big lobby. So the 5-year financial thing, I think that I keep preaching, the selectmen got to get their hands around that. They got to get it out in the open, and let's hope this budgeting process forces that out all into the open, and we can get it done. But the requirement by the state doesn't include revenue and other expense money. It just includes capital money, and that's where I think there's a problem. We don't even do that properly. So there's a lot of work to be done there. I think one of these programs, I'll get that capital plan from last year out and go over it with you and show you how it was constructed, preferably before the new one comes out. And then we can talk about the new one as it's being developed and let you all know what this 5-year financial capital plan is going to look like as it's being developed over the next few months. And you should pay attention to that, because that's the future of your town. And you need to be able to hear this and see it objectively. The next one is produce a plan to achieve the 1 to 5 year financial objectives. Once you get them, you got to have a plan to achieve them, and you got to start making decisions that allow you to make that plan. And one of them is get the development or some other thing like that in. Let's get the Torp Museum up and working. Let's get the wall, the mural project up and working. You know, and let's get other businesses into town. But you have to have a plan for that, and you have to go out and manage it and make it happen. And if you don't do that, it will not happen. The next is review and make quarterly decisions, necessary decisions quarterly. So what happens is you have the objectives, you have the plan, and then every quarter you sit down and say, where do we stand against it? And you take action. And if you're not meeting it, you have to cut out some expenses. If you are getting more money in than you thought, then you could speed up the plan. If not, then you got to manage to try to make the plan happen. So on this particular chart, red means achieved, blue means in progress, and yellow means not yet started. So those are the major status objectives. Now we're going to talk about the important decisions that were made. I put this up every week, and this will be, I put a line on here to show you where the last one left off, but we still have a couple blue ones. South Cary Avenue, that'll be in a public hearing here in a month or so, whenever that's going to, and we still got to get this tax deferral for the elderly resolved. I didn't make it red this time because we still got the big issue to deal with, and that's the qualifications. That's going to take many months. That's probably going to be on there forever, you know, for another 6 months, but let's hope not. But those are the two that are blue on there. And then now for the ones for this week, we have, we appointed, the boards and commissioners there were 3 reappointments made this week at the meeting, more than 3. There were a whole bunch of people reappointed to various commissions, and then we dissolved some inactive commissions. And I think I list those when I go into my comment section of the program. I list those. But we dissolved some inactive commissions, some of which have been around for years, and always been working on the issues, but we still have the commissions down. So they canceled those unanimous consent the other night. So that's good. It does some of the paperwork cleanup, and they were working on that in the last administration too, trying to clean up all these commissions, make sure everybody's up to date, everybody's terms were right, and you know, we didn't have any commissions we didn't need, and that kind of thing. You know me. I'm a firm believer in minimal commissions and minimal number of people on the commissions. That's more responsibility on the line management. So I'm happy to see this kind of thing, and I do appreciate the commissions. I know we need them, and we have to follow the state laws, and we have to have some people to do that. But we don't want any unnecessary commissions, and we don't want them chock full of 10, 12 people on each one. Next one is Lambert K Joint Plan. That's being worked on. When we sold, or when we talked about selling this Lambert K to the present people that are interested in purchasing it, there were some conditions in there that the town had to meet and the developer had to meet. And time is going by, things are changing, so they're going to revisit that with the town manager, which they've been doing. They've been working on it with the town manager. They came to this last selectman meeting, and now they're going to be working on it again with the town manager for a few weeks, and then next selectman meeting or not, they might have an executive session and go over that. But that's moving forward in the right direction. They did say they wanted to change the facade a bit, and that's a request put on them by some of the people that they're working with that want to preserve the antiquity of the building as much as possible. So, and they can get funding to do that if they meet certain conditions by this funding organization, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but if you watch the repeat of the program, you'll probably find that out. So Lambert K is in there. They're still working. I mean, it's not by any means a shoe-in yet. I mean, a lot of things have to come together here from a financial viewpoint and funding viewpoint and planning viewpoint before this contract is resolved and we get our $50,000 from them. So that's being worked on. I put that blue because that's going to be around for quite a while. That's not going to be resolved overnight with 1 or 2 meetings. I think that'll be around for many months, and I hope it's shorter than that. But anyway, Bruce will do a good job on that, and we have confidence, and the selectmen will as well, all 7 of them, because I think everybody's interested in the future of Lambert K and having it be a success. The next, they went into the executive session where they talked about that was policy again, Public Works. They got that contract resolved 8 months late, but it's done now. The next is a town manager search. They discussed that in executive session, and with all personnel issues, they can't discuss that outside the meeting, so we don't know anything about that. But I think sooner or later they're going to be, they have a plan, and they did announce the plan in the executive selectmen meeting, and I think pretty soon, within a week or so, they're going to be, they had 22 people apply. I think they've narrowed that down to 5 or 6, and they're then going to, I think I read that in a newspaper somewhere, and I may be wrong on that, but then they're going to interview the people, and then they're going to have to make a decision. So let's wish them well on that, and I sure hope Bruce is going to be a hard act to follow, I can tell you that. So let's get somebody good in here, preferably somebody with business experience, and we're used to working more or less in a business area, and with good qualifications. We never want to underestimate the qualifications, but let's not. We don't want somebody for their educational qualifications alone. The business experience and dealing with our type of business, not necessarily even what I would call a town. You know, it doesn't have to be that. Just to be a good businessman who knows how to run a business should be able to do a pretty good job in his town, especially while the businessmen are still on the board of selectmen. Might be a little different after that, but at least while they're here, they can help guide them, they can work with them, and probably get some momentum going and some seeds planted here that'll keep us going for a few years. Now remember, during the election, when we were trying to get the businessmen in, I kept saying over and over again that we need to keep them in for a while. We need to keep them in. One of the reasons I kept this program going is I want to keep you posted on all this for the next year and a half or so, as long as I'm able to do it. And I want you to be aware so that when you vote next time, you know how much you need these businessmen, and how much you know how this town manager, how important the town manager is to the town, and how important it is to delegate to him and not micromanage him, and not nitpick him, and not have the quarrelsome meetings and things like that. So the proper environment, as you know, is very important. So now they also had a meeting with the Labor Council. The Labor Council update, I don't know what happened there. That was done behind closed doors, but they did talk about those 3 things. We call it in camera, behind closed doors in the executive session. They came out of the executive session, and they did vote unanimously to extend the Public Works contract until the next fiscal year, and to start working on the new contract. And that's very good. Proud to see that. The colors on this chart: red complete, blue in progress, yellow not yet started. Now the total policy, this is kind of good news but not great news. This week we talked about 9 issues. There were a lot of other things in the meeting, but I didn't even bother. I mean, I don't grade some of the earlier things in the meeting, like public comment. I don't put that in here. These are just the major things they do on the agenda, and some of the things they had on the agenda weren't even worthy of being put on here, so I didn't. But I put on 6, yes, they were policy issues, and 3 that weren't policy issues. The steep grant, for example, that wasn't a policy issue. They're still working, and the town manager's working on that. It'll be a policy issue when they come to vote for it, especially if there's any money involved from the town. So, and put the application in, they have to. So at some point that'll become a policy issue. But not right now. It's not a policy issue on the agenda. We didn't discuss any policy issue there, and I didn't feel the Lambert K was a policy issue either at this particular meeting. It might be at the next one or some future one, but this Bruce could go ahead and work with them. He doesn't really need a direction from the town to work with them. We already know we have to work with them. We're trying to do a contract with them, so that's pretty obvious. So altogether now, and by the way, I'm not trying to demean the meeting. I think they made 6 good decisions there, and 72 together to date since they've been elected, and 72 in the policy area and 20 not. And boy, that's a big difference from what I used to see before, so I'm happy with that. Now, was this a business-like meeting? Yes, it was. Nowhere near like I'd like to see it be, but it was a business-like meeting. There was no quarreling. There was no finger-pointing. There were none of the things that I consider to be. There were discussions, and that's okay. That can happen. There were things that weren't policy that I prefer not to see there. 2 hours is a long time for a meeting like this. There was a presentation that probably shouldn't have been there, so in my opinion, other people have a different feeling, otherwise they wouldn't have had it in the meeting. But it's easy for me. I'm watching it on a recording after late at night, so I can just skip through a lot of that stuff. But anybody who wants to sit through that meeting and watch it, it's pretty painful to do that. So, all right, so that's that. Now I'm going to get the meeting comments. I got about 20 minutes to go through this. There's plenty to say, some of which I already touched on, but I will go through it. And we'll go over that. It goes reasonably slow as Brian's AAA personality will allow him to do. First of all, the public comment was far too long and detailed. The public comment is required by the charter and is necessary, but in my opinion should be limited in one way or another. Somehow we've got to get our handle around this. I did suggest ways to do it in my how to run an efficient meeting thing, but so far we haven't been able to do it. The meeting before we had no public comment, so I guess if you average it out, it's probably not too bad, but we need to do something about that. I'm not in a position to do anything about it except make suggestions, but I know if I were there, I would try to do something about that. The charter says you need to have public comment, but it doesn't need to say it can go on ad nauseum forever, and that you need to talk about everything to the extent we do. So I think there are ways we can improve on that. Everybody's time is valuable. People who get up early in the morning, they work all day. It's not only for the people attending the meeting, but also for the people that are watching it on the television. So you got to keep all these people in consideration when you do these things. All right, the next is the Lambert K presentation. Was, in my opinion, again, this is Brian's opinion. Not everybody will agree. Not everybody will run a meeting like I'd like to run a meeting, but was far too long. And in my opinion, unnecessary for this particular meeting. Very necessary work to be done, yes, but with the town manager and not at this particular meeting. So my view is that it was far too long and unnecessary at this meeting, and it's better left to the town manager to review and present the status succinctly. That's a word we don't use around here too much, and it's hard to pronounce, succinctly, when necessary, and bring recommendations to the board when the bottom line requirements of facade changes are known. Once the town manager gets his hands around it, then he can come and ask for 2 or 3 decisions, and we can get on with it. And if we have to go back when he gets his decisions and do some more work with Lambert K, then, that'll have to happen. So that's my view on that, and I don't think I'll be ever changing my view on that. I went to a Torrington councilman meeting the other night, the same night as this, on the 4th. I went to the Torrington equivalent of the selectmen meeting. It lasted a half an hour. The public comment was 5 minutes. Now, I'm told that they don't always last a half an hour. They often go to, an hour. The average is probably about an hour and a quarter. That includes long budget meetings in the wintertime. So we can make a lot of improvements here, and I'm going to be going over that in detail, perhaps at the next program next week. I'm going to talk about the meeting I went to. I did get a recording. They don't tape record them, but I do have a recording of the meeting, and I do have the agenda, and I do have the minutes. So I can go over them with you, and I can show you a lot of the things they do that I kind of been professing on my program here that we should do. And we are starting to do a lot of them, but there's still more to go. The boards and commission portion was concise and productive. I have been critical about that in the past, because to go around and talk to each selectman who says, well, everything's going fine at my commission, that's not my idea. what should happen there. I think the town manager should know all that and be able to bring it out when there's a problem only. The good stuff, we manage by exception here. So what we're interested in is what's the problems we need to fix. And all the stuff that's going well, that's good. We take that for granted. Everything should go well. We've got a team of people paid to do a good job, and they're good people. But what we want to do is help them. That's what the Board of Selectmen's for, is to help them. So this time we did an excellent job on that. We did good work, and it was short, concise, and to the point, and we handled those commission appointments and the commission, devolving certain commissions very responsibly and professionally. So thanks for that. The next was... I wanted to say to you that there were two long existing non-productive committees and one commission that were canceled. And the alternative school committee they used to have at one time, was looking at an alternative school. I wasn't around in those days, or I didn't know about it. That was canceled. There was an audit committee, and after talking with the lawyer who was present at the meeting, the attorney, they decided that they could cancel that as well. These were all done unanimously in the end. The Danbury Quarter Road Cemetery Commission. I guess there was at one time, I don't even know where the Danbury Quarter Road Cemetery is, but there was a commission set up to look into that and do something with it. And they just canceled that because nobody was doing anything with it over the last few years. So, so that's now no longer in existence. And then some commissioners were reappointed, as I said earlier, and then they eliminated one commission liaison. Selectman Capabianca said that since Candy Perez was going to the our number one or whatever meeting, and she was on the commission there, that he didn't need to be the liaison. I think that's good. The fewer liaison and the fewer people going into these areas, the better I think it is. More responsibility to the commissions. Now, they did say at the meeting that this was a very responsible commission, and one of our better ones. So I'm happy with that. That's good. The town manager's report. That's why I think you see behind me tonight, Bruce, again. The town manager's report was excellent. It couldn't, it's going to get better. It's not perfect, but it was excellent. I think it was a bit too detailed for my liking, and people asked a lot of detailed questions that perhaps shouldn't even have been brought up in the meeting, and I think that that's not so much the town manager's fault as the rest of the selectmen for even asking the questions, but those are the kind of things they should do during the week. Give them a phone call or something, but we don't need to get into all that detail. That's why it takes 2 hours to get through the meeting. And then the town manager is gaining momentum. You can see it. It's loud and clear. He's for the heart and the meat and the real muscle of the meeting. He's right in the middle of it all. He does have the facts. He is getting involved. He is getting things done. He's getting things done that haven't been done in a long time, and it's obvious that his presence is being felt and appreciated. And you watch it from meeting to meeting, and you watch these selectmen, how they do these things, and keep it in mind when we have the election in the next 22 months or whenever it is now. I guess I have to get a little bored and put up here how many months to the next election, because I'm thinking about it all the time. We really need to get these businessmen back in next time around to keep this momentum going, and we can add more businessmen, but I wouldn't take any businessmen away. So keep that in mind. It's appreciated. Things are getting done at a much faster pace now. You can see that for yourself, and if anybody wants to watch it, and then when somebody tells you it isn't going fast, then you tell them how you can see it on TV, and you know it because you can see it for yourself. So it's a much faster pace. He's gaining more and more control. He's getting more and more delegated to him. He's grabbing the bit and running with it, and as much as the charter allows. The charter only allows him to do so much. It expects a lot of him, the charter does, but it doesn't allow him to do these things, and that's one of the reasons why the Charter Revision Commission is having a look at this. Again, I don't think too many people are in disagreement on that role needs to be either, if not changed by charter to elected mayoral form, then that needs to be strengthened. I'm not even sure that's good enough, so the jury's still out on all of that. I will be presenting more and more on this program of how a mayoral system does work, So you can make your own mind up whether how you think this should be in time to vote at a referendum should it ever occur. The coal building problem is now resolved. Thank God for that. It's done. The bank and the owners and whoever else, the private parties, are going to take care of that problem. They're going to resolve it. The town won't be involved anymore. Now, the town's only involved because it's forced to by state statute. And I'm not going to get into all the details here. You can see the details or hear the details from Bruce at the rerun of the selectmen meeting, or if you don't want to see that on Saturday morning because you're busy or working, you can get a copy from the down here at Channel 13 for a slight fee. I think it's $10 or $15. I'm not positive. I haven't bought one in a long time. But so the coal building problem is resolved. People are living in that building, so it must be kept. The heating must be kept up to certain standards, and all that's happening. And it's happening the right way. The town's not doing it. The owners are doing it, and their financiers, the banks, are doing it, and forcing it to be done, and probably the insurance companies. So that's the way we want things to happen, and thanks, Bruce, for getting in the middle of it and getting that squared away. There was, a few weeks ago, we were talking about taking it over and making it part of a home and own it, the town owning it and all that, and, you know, that's not my kind of idea of the way to go. The next is the town DEP meeting was held with promising results. I guess the head of the DEP commissioner was here, meeting with the town, various people in the town, and I think that was, I don't know exactly what happened there, but that happened very positively, and it did happen. And again, thanks, Bruce, for pulling that all together and making it go smoothly. Next is, notice we're talking a lot about Bruce's stuff here now, so very important. The rec board and private businessman's purchase of some local state property over by the playing fields is progressing and is going in the right direction. So everybody's going to end up, if it keeps going the way it's going, and Bruce is in the middle of that, managing that, and as he should be, and if it keeps going the way it's going with the state and with the people involved, it's going to be a happy solution for everybody involved there. So thanks again for that one. The meeting was held with the new Labor Council. We have a new Labor Council, Victor and Michelle from Torrington, Connecticut. Yeah, that's the one that's going to be $65 an hour cheaper, and it's probably going to save us a lot of money one way or another in the long run. So that meeting was held. Again, Bruce is involved in that. And the resolution either or states fees, that's still up in the air a bit, but there is a team working on that, the finance director, the town manager, the developer himself, the commission leaders, they're all working on that. Remember last week we said for a year or so we've been hearing that the developer owes us $42,000 or whatever, 48, whatever the number is, but then we found out, hey, we got a lot of his money too. So that's what they're looking at. They're trying to find out what exactly is the situation here, and they're going to fix it. Now, as usual, things aren't going to turn out to be black or white. They're going to be gray. It's going to end up that we got some of his money and he's got some of our money, and there's some deals that he has to follow for certain reasons and some things we have to follow. So that'll get resolved, but it's being worked on. My guess is within the next meeting or two here, Bruce should have that resolved. Thanks to you again, Bruce, for that. Now, the next thing that I want to say is that the Kelly's Kitchen, there was a fire there. That's a new business in town, a couple of years old, a restaurant, a popular restaurant. It's one of our, one of the restaurants are one of our great attractions in this town for getting people to come here from around the area and to keeping our own people from going to other areas for restaurants. So Kelly's is an important part of this community, and they did have a fire there, and when they had the fire, they found a lot of problems because of the fire. It wasn't their fault, the fire, I don't think. I don't know all the details, but it was inside of one of the walls, and that often happens. The firemen got there and did a wonderful job, but it did force them to close down their restaurant. You probably read this in the papers. And a lot of people in the town came to their aid, assistance. This was, again, coordinated by Bruce and some of the selectmen, and Kelly's still, I guess, from what I read in the papers, isn't absolutely positive they're going to reopen again, but their chances of reopening in 3 or 4 weeks are much better now because the town's pulling together to help them. And this is part of what I like to call the let's be friendly policy, and the policy of being friendly to businesses and people trying to come to town, and hospitable. I always have trouble saying that word, but let's be hospitable, and this is one of the best ways. This word will get around. The word will get around the community all over the state that we have done this to help out one of our businesses. The Ambulance Association, thank you very much, donated some equipment to the police department. That's great. The Willow Street and CLP property meeting with the town has been delayed, but it'll take place the next few weeks. Bruce is in the middle of that, pulling all that together. The town manager was reminded by the selectmen that he has to direct the schools to do their best to comply with the 3% bottom line objective for next year's budget. And I imagine he'll be doing that if he hasn't done it already. The new Lambert K plan will be discussed between the prospective owners and the town manager. The requirements of the town will then be discussed with the Board of Selectmen in a future executive session. We're still in Bruce's part here. See, that's why his picture's up today. The Pearson Tank state fine has finally been resolved. That was a $20,000 fine that the state was going to charge us with the Pearson Tank. Turns out now the state has said we don't have to pay that money. There was a big hoo-ha last year about spending money to get it done in time without any state help. And now it turns out, now we do have some minor conditions. I think we talked about them too much in the meeting the other night, but they do have to be fulfilled. So town manager will be pulling that together, and there'll be a plan for that, agreed someday by the selectmen. And we have 10 years to do those tanks, and we'll be moving on them. An unanimous agreement was reached to investigate the possible problems with the other two schools for the underground piping, because the tanks are good for the next 10 years. So I think that discussion went on too far, but the right thing's happening. The town manager will be left to handle that, and he will. He'll do a good job with it. The executive session was fairly brief, 20 minutes. That isn't too bad, and very productive. Thanks to everybody for that. A lot of work was done by the town manager and others in advance, other commission members and everybody, to make sure we could do that in that length of time. So we're happy with that. That's the recruitment for the next town manager is moving along. The tax deferral policy, as I told you, was changed and agreed unanimously for one of the first increments to the change, and that's going to happen. So with that, that's the end of my program for now. I think next week we're going to talk more about the mayoral forum down in Torrington, which is the guinea pig I picked to look at the mayoral forum myself. There's nothing, it's not the commission doing it. It's Brian O'Haron as a commission member doing it for his own good and for the good of the town. So everything I say next week will be my own opinion. But tune in next week if you want to learn more about how a mayoral form of government works. Thank you very much. It's past my bedtime.